Hi, Lois and Seyi. I wanted to have a conversation with you really today because everyone knows that in the last number of days there have been some pretty bad things that have happened across the world, and starting in America with that terrible scene that many of us didn't want to watch. But very clearly, as a Christian minister, I hated the thought of that racist attitude. And I started to think about the people in our church and how you guys are feeling and responding. And what I have seen is that a younger generation is pushing through with a sense of indignation that this kind of thing can't go on. And we're not here today really to talk about that issue particularly. We're talking about the whole picture, not just in America, but in the UK as well. And I'm really interested that there's not a trace of any of that kind of approach to life within church life. And so I wanted to talk to you about how you were feeling at this particular time, and in this conversation to say how we can do better in terms of living together and walking together in church life. Within our vision statement at Alive, we're talking a lot about multi-ethnic, multi-generational church. And so for the next few minutes, I'd really love you to share with me your thoughts about your feelings, but also to do with the issues that have been raised, and direct your thoughts towards how we as a church can learn, hear one another, have conversation, and move forward together in this. So over to you guys, and just feel really, really free to share your hearts.
For me, hearing about the killing of George Floyd, it wasn't necessarily just about like the killing of a man through police brutality. It wasn't just that incident. I think it was just hearing about previous incidents that have happened and kind of like seemed a bit like a pattern. And so it kind of just brought kind of frustration. And if I'm being honest, my kind of feeling was kind of anger, hurt, like pain. And in that time, I had to make a decision whether I wanted to go to God with it, even though I kind of felt entitled to feel how I felt. And so I went to God with it, and going to God with it, it really helped me, like in terms of like my perspective to like kind of incidents as to like what's happening at the time. And like for some people, they might think, oh, how does that, like being in the UK and that's an incident in America, how kind of do you relate with that in a sense? And I think just like because of like history, so because of like learning about colonization and slavery, it was kind of like it's deeper than just a police brutality issue. It had things to do with systemic kind of racism, and I kind of related with that because I feel like I've had like experiences of that. But going to like God about the situation, it was the only thing that kind of helped in terms of like healing. I had to realise that even like in the situation, kind of like a forgiveness situation, it's not necessarily for other people but for myself. And so that really helped me in terms of like moving forward with it. And then I looked at like the Bible and I had to think about Jesus, how he's someone who like empathises, and other like incidents in terms of like with the Israelites and their struggle in Egypt and kind of how they handled it. And I knew that like before anything, like Moses would always go and pray. The Israelites would always go and pray and seek God for like direction and kind of like strategy to know what to do next. So I went to God, prayed about it, and also another thing that I found really helpful was I found a verse that said, oh yeah, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but rulers, principalities. And I just had to realise, my fight's not against men and women, but like it's like spiritual, and it's things that kind of can influence people. And I think like with racism, it makes people uncomfortable, and it's a very strong word, but I think sometimes it can come from like unconscious bias, in the sense that sometimes just because people haven't been exposed or they don't know, they may treat people differently, and may sometimes it escalates into like an incident, for example, with George Floyd. So I think that's been kind of what I've been going through with the incident these past couple of days. And in regard to church and being a Christian, I can't help but think that we need to be the ones to kind of set the example. And even like in this time, as the world is kind of handling and going through this, we need to kind of be like a light to kind of represent and let people know that actually God's perspective in this, and how God can even turn this around and like really use it for his glory. But yeah, I'm aware I've spoken about it.
I mean, that's an incredibly mature conversation, and I'm thrilled that you've thought that through, because I think it is appropriate to be angry, it's really appropriate to look at the situation and feel sickened by how a human being can live and react in that kind of way. So, and yet, of course, we recognise the flawed nature of society, and as you rightly point it back to the spiritual decline in our nations, and the gospel of hope, which brings us together, doesn't it? Lois, I'd love to hear your thoughts and the way you're processing things at the moment.
Yeah, I'd definitely say it's been a difficult couple of days, just with the news of everything that's happened around the issue. So for myself personally, I've just had to take some time off social media because, especially Twitter, because there are a lot of conflicting opinions flying around. And I must say that initially when I did hear about the death of George Floyd, it was so easy for me to just scroll past, because I just say, like, from my experience, you hear about, black people being killed in America and also issues that happen here in the UK. But it's almost a thing where sometimes there isn't necessarily much that's done about it. So you can almost become desensitized to it. But there was something very different about this situation where I just really felt that I just had to speak up and use my voice, because it was getting louder and louder on social media. So I thought there's just something I have to speak on, and I can't, just like sort of hide behind other people's words. I have to come and, share my own. And I think definitely, similar to Seyi, there's been anger and resentment just at the fact that around this whole situation. And, like, for example, with a tree, if you were to try and deal with, maybe if the tree had like an issue or a disease or whatever, you'd go to the root of the tree in order to find out, what the root issue is, as opposed to just cutting off a leaf, because the leaf can grow back, But if you're able and comfortable to go to the root and deal with the issue from there, it's from there that you can get growth. And I think the reason why, some people may say, why is it a thing where this keeps coming up, the whole racism topic? The real reason is because it hasn't been dealt with at the root issue. And, I also just believe that if you're able to deal with that, what that is. So you're in knowledge of what the issue is and you deal with it. From there, you can then grow. And once you're able to grow from that, they won't necessarily be easy, because, even with growth, you get taller, you get bigger, but there are also growth pains, but it's a natural part of life. And so once we're able to face those things head on, I do believe that things can change and can get better.
That's so helpful, actually. And it is true, isn't it, that if good people remain silent, things don't change. And I, as a Christian leader, want to make sure that, we play our part and want to talk more, learn more. Certainly, even the last few days, I've been learning things, to feel something of the pain and so on is very important for leaders. And so I suppose for both of you, I think it boils down to this, doesn't it? That it's to do with my heart, your heart, our hearts. It's everybody taking responsibility, isn't it? It's everybody speaking out, but it's also everybody living the Christian life in love and devotion and commitment. And I'd love to hear what you guys think about the future and the kind of church that you'd like to be a part of in the future. What kind of church should Alive be?
I'll definitely say that I'd like to see a church that, stands for what is right, and also speaking up on, issues that happen in our everyday lives for all people, whether you're black, white, or whether you're disabled, or, lots of different things like that. But also just a place where, when people walk in, they feel genuinely welcomed. And that does happen, and it's an amazing thing. But I also believe it's on not just a few people, it's on all of us to, reach out and have that conversation, ask people where they're from, trying to learn about, people's cultures, for example. And I think it starts with, looking inwardly and also wondering if there's anything that I'm believing that is not in line with what God's word also says, and being the type of people to be quick to call out injustice when we see it, whether that's in our own spheres or in our families, then also doing that in society. So in that regard, that's what I'd say with that.
I'd say I'd love to see multi-ethnic, in all areas of the life of the church. I'd love to see more diverse people from everywhere serving in the life of the church, and I'm not just talking on platforms or on leadership positions, but in all lives of the church, to see them come through in connect groups as well. I'd love to see it be diverse, so see different people from different nations come together in that, and also I'd just love to see people kind of step out. Sometimes it's out of people's comfort zone maybe, but I'd love to see people kind of step out of their comfort zone, go and speak to that person who usually you wouldn't speak to, and see them grow as a result.
Yeah, for me, that is really exciting because, in our vision statement, that's the heart, the desire, but vision statements just put out there aren't the answer. It has to be in the hearts of every one of us. And I'd like to be in the church that you're talking about in the future. I want to walk with you if you'll let us. And I would love the kind of atmosphere you're speaking about to be exactly who we are, vibrant. The church that I see in the book of Revelation is everything you've said. It's diversity, it's every ethnic group, it's the young and the old, the rich and the poor, it's every one of us. In all spheres of life, living out the mandate of the Christian message, which interestingly, and I'll close with this, over this lockdown period, I've been looking over and over again at the Sermon on the Mount and the things that Jesus taught about how we handle life and how we relate with one another. It's all in the book, isn't it? And that's the thing that pulls us together. And brings us into the family of God. And in the family of God, Jesus is the head, and we're brothers and sisters, and we're together in it. No one's more important than anyone else. And so I'm really sorry that you've spent some days in anguish and pain. But you need to know that as a church, we want to be alongside you in seeing the kingdom of God come in the way that you've described. Thanks for the conversation. Let's keep talking, and God bless you both.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an honour to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting such an important issue. And I really believe that we will definitely see change from the inside out. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great, and we'll be talking more in the days ahead. God bless. Thanks for the chat.